For those who chase visual thrills, professional wrestling has long aimed to please. A portion of wrestling's creative model hinges upon trying to top what has already been done, especially on a physical level. And in such a physical form of simulated combat, clearing that ever-rising bar can be a daunting challenge. But like a moth to a flame, some wrestlers are drawn to that challenge, putting their bodies on the line for the sake of entertainment, while understanding that the margin for error is sometimes razor thin. Though most pro wrestling high-wire stunts go well enough, some backfire in horrific fashion. Such was the case in the year 2000 when ECW star New Jack was nearly done in as the result of one particular dangerous spot. In the middle of a live pay-per-view before thousands of attendees and tens of thousands watching at home, the original gangster had a very serious brush with death. He would never quite be the same again. I'm Jack from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is the true story of the Danbury Fall. Not even a year had passed since one of pro wrestling's most profoundly upsetting tragedies. In an accident that could have been avoided entirely during a WWF pay-per-view, Owen Hart fell over 70 feet to his death while making a special descending entrance as his Blue Blazer alter ego. Among the numerous controversies associated with Hart's senseless death were issues with the flimsy rigging and the fact that the pay-per-view continued to its planned conclusion even after it was known that he had sadly passed away. While investigations and legal action played out, life, as it often does, went on in professional wrestling. At the time, the industry was living through a boom period, enjoying popularity not seen since the mid to late 80s. Among the many sought-after elements in wrestling was the proliferation of stunts, the willingness of its participants to go above and beyond the routine ballet of a match. Falls off steel cages and through them, flip dives off of ladders and other high platforms, brawls in dangerous locations like junkyards like a Bash at the Beach 99, table spots, chairs to the skull, and even the implementation of unforgiving motor vehicles had resulted in injuries for numerous performers, many of them quite serious injuries. And though a lot of these stunts had been performed with some semblance of safeguarding, minimized risk doesn't mean neutralized risk, and few, if any, performers would come away totally unscathed. Since the mid-90s, ECW had built its reputation on the promotion of carefree barbarism. Whether it was Sabu springboarding into peril, Balls Mahoney's chair swinging, Spike Dudley's ragdoll bumps, or Rob Van Dam's death-defying dives, fans went to ECW events expecting a certain amount of anatomical sacrifice. One individual who brought this violence on the regular was New Jack. From the moment natural-born killers blared over the sound system, New Jack, sometimes alone or sometimes with a friend, would launch a trash can full of blunt objects into the ring. He'd then spend the duration of his matches playing a game of smash or stab, and for many opponents, the answer ended up being C, both. By the turn of the century, the New Jack match formula had become quite easy to memorize. The song hits, weapons are introduced, maybe a bit of ringside brawling, metallic strikes to the skull of the enemy, some forehead carving, and usually a diving chair shot called the 187 as a finish. On a good number of occasions, particularly matches taped for TV, New Jack went a little bit further into the stratosphere. At some point during the course of his arena-spanning fights, New Jack would dive off some high perch within the arena like a balcony or a wall ledge onto an opponent laid across a table. And by New Jack's own admission on Dark Side of the Ring, he would apparently snort cocaine in the locker room to get himself in the mind state needed to perform these sort of risky free falls. The balcony spots had become a regular part of New Jack's repertoire in the late 90s, visible in battles with the likes of the Dudley Boys, former Gangsters partner Mustafa Saeed, and ECW's latest heel faction. After the Dudleys jumped to WWF in the summer of '99, Paul Heyman cobbled together several undercard heels into a new stable. They were called Da Baldies, a street gang whose unifying theme was the fact that all of them had the chrome dome look. After cycling through several short-lived members, the Baldies settled upon a firmly regular trio: Kingpin leader Angel, short-stack roughneck DeVito, and rotund enforcer Grimes. Grimes, or Vic Grimes as he was better known, had been an industry curiosity for several years. Standing barely over 6 feet tall but weighing in excess of 330 pounds, Grimes contradicted his quite roly-poly physique with unthinkable agility. Though far from technically polished, Grimes could cut flips like very few men of a similar frame. Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader were probably the only men of comparable shape and size that fans had seen tumble through the air before Grimes came along. A late 90s series of matches with the much smaller Erin O'Grady, the future Crash Holly, on the West Coast indie scene brought Grimes considerable notice. Their big man versus little man dynamic spawned some wildly entertaining and entertainingly wild bouts, and it put both men on the WWF's radar. In the summer of '99, each of them debuted on WWF TV, but only one stuck. Crash Holly quickly became a fixture, while Grimes, playing a drug dealer named Key that aligned with Droz and Prince Albert, was gone in a flash. Grimes had apparently injured the Godfather during his introduction angle, while reported issues with his general work also led to Grimes being cast out of the Federation very quickly. Before the year's end, at the apparent recommendation of the WWF, Grimes went to work for ECW, where he was immediately put into DeBaldi's stable. By this time, New Jack and Angel were embroiled in a heated feud after Angel stuck the original gangster in the eye with a staple gun during an angle. Over the months ahead, New Jack would play the role of a one-man army against Angel and his henchmen. Quite a few of the New Jack-Angel matches would follow the following template. New Jack and Angel would begin the match brawling among the strewn about plunder. As New Jack gained the upper early hand, DeVito and Grimes would jump in to interfere. With Angel down, New Jack and Grimes would brawl around the venue, culminating in New Jack incapacitating Grimes with some high dive stunt at the back of the arena. New Jack would then make his way back to the ring, overpower the smaller DeVito, but then fall victim to a recovered Angel, who would steal another win to bolster his claim of being king of the streets over his arch nemesis. The part of that formula that's notable is where New Jack and Grimes fought to the back of the arena, generally in the vicinity of the entranceway. They'd done this particular dance several times since the latter days of 1999, and it was still in their usual itinerary come March 2000. March 12th was the date of ECW's second pay-per-view of the year, Living Dangerously, emanating from the O'Neill Center in Danbury, Connecticut, and ECW drew an estimated 4,000 fans to the building. The card was an unusual one in that of the first 7 matches, only one of them went past the 10-minute mark, a bull rope match won by the 54-year-old Dusty Rhodes. When the middle-aged, semi-retired American Dream is your show's Iron Man, that means something's possibly a bit amiss. The card continued with one accelerated showcase after another. The New Dangerous Alliance, C.W. Anderson and Bill Wiles, defeated Danny Doring and Roadkill. World champion Mike Awesome won an impromptu match over mid-carder Kid Cash, and Jado and Gato made a totally random appearance, losing to mid-card duo Nova and Chris Chetty. Super Crazy and Rhino advanced to a tournament final to crown a new ECW television champion, the latter by forfeit over the Sandman. After Balls Mahoney defeated FMW regular Kentaro Kanemura in under 2 minutes, he was attacked by DeBaldi's. Now in classic Pavlovian fashion, the ECW fans took the trio's appearance as the impetus for New Jack to appear, probably armed with his array of gimmicks. Right on cue, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube's song heralded the arrival of the original gangster. Just before then, Grimes had flattened Mahoney with an impressive top rope dive through a ringside table, so he'd briefly been out of the picture while New Jack battered Angel and DeVito. After New Jack took out the other two, Grimes made the save and began carving up New Jack with a pizza cutter. Domino's is gonna be furious. Quickly though, New Jack takes over, attacking Grimes with a snow shovel, but Grimes gets the upper hand again with a low blow. Soon, they were both on the floor and among the people, beginning their inevitable trek towards one side of the arena. Cameras briefly lose sight of the two among the sea of humanity, struggling to keep up with the walk and brawl to the back of the arena, before we see Grimes pounding a bloody New Jack with a crowd control stanchion. We then see him place his opponent onto a table before setting up a second one over the top of him, fixing to make New Jack the meat in a sawdust sandwich. Grimes then began climbing an adjacent scaffold, but seconds later New Jack was off the tables and climbing the other side of the structure. 13 feet off the ground, Grimes and New Jack engaged in a slugfest with extremely minimum support underfoot. At this point, the plan was apparently for New Jack to throw Grimes off the scaffold through the two tables, in what would have no doubt been a spectacular scene. In a later interview, Angel made the claim that when the spot was originally conceived, it was he that was supposed to take that tumble alongside New Jack, and that 4 tables were going to break their shared fall. DeBaldi's leader also added that the plan was for he and New Jack to both be wiped out by the harsh landing and then helped away by medics, without an official winner. However, Angel says that he requested additional plywood to cover the surface area atop the scaffold, as he was understandably quite skittish about the lack of footing. When he couldn't get that assurance, Angel balked at doing the spot. With Angel out, Grimes was tasked with the spot, and he found himself getting cold feet atop the unstable scaffold. Other wrestlers would claim that neither man scouted the scaffolding ahead of time, so the spot was planned without either of them knowing how little footing they would have. But whereas Grimes was skittish, New Jack was committed to finishing the spot. After all, both men had just climbed this scaffold and 2 tables are set up below. From a show perspective, they can't exactly back out now, they've already teased this massive spot. For what felt like an eternity, Grimes and New Jack shuffled atop the scaffold, throwing occasional worked punches to give the impression that they were still brawling. But they were actually stalling, while New Jack tried to convince Grimes to go through with the fall. Despite Grimes' protestations, New Jack told him on 3. With his hands grasping Grimes by the lapels, New Jack counted to 3 and tugged the super heavyweight off. Grimes, though, subtly pulled back in hesitation, which was critical to the timing. Holding on to Grimes, New Jack's feet went over the side, and because of his reluctance probably, Grimes went a second later than his opponent maybe would have liked. And that's putting it mildly. New Jack's feet hit the top table, and Grimes, like a boulder, rolled through the air. Upon New Jack's awkward landing, Grimes' back hit New Jack's head and slammed it into the concrete floor, crunching it beneath his frame. Cameras panned wide amid the cheers and the cries of astonishment. Color commentator Don Callis' voice grew serious as the staff quickly realized that New Jack was badly hurt. A pool of blood formed under New Jack's head. He later claimed that he had brain fluid leaking from his nose. New Jack had suffered brain damage and a skull fracture, as well as blindness in his right eye. He'd also broken his leg from his foot spiking the table. Grimes was helped away while the collective bump was shown from numerous angles on the replay. The cameras, though, stopped going back to New Jack, relying on wide shots and replays as a means of filling time. Backstage was a scene of sheer panic. A number of wrestlers were actually of the belief that New Jack may have even died. Callis and Joey Styles did their best to keep calm on commentary under the circumstances, scrambling while announcing that they would try to have an update on New Jack's condition before the night was over, but no update would come. Holding the show altogether was apparently not on the menu. Only 2 matches remained, both for championships, so the decision was made to rush through both bouts as quickly as possible. The tag title match was next, a 3-way won by Lance Storm and Just Incredible after a mere 9 minutes. The TV title finals closed with Crazy upsetting Rhino in a shade under 8 minutes. Living Dangerously only ran a sliver over 2 hours due to the panicked haste to speed through the final matches. As the event rushed to its conclusion, New Jack was finally helped away and transported to a local hospital via ambulance. Not only did he survive, but he was back in the ring about a month later, swinging weapons at his opponents once more. Though still capable of battering other wrestlers with crutches, guitars, and metal objects, these injuries would affect New Jack for the rest of his life. As for Grimes, New Jack claimed that the Baldy's enforcer never reached out to apologize or to see how he was doing. The two had a physical altercation at a later TV taping, but continued working together in the short term before Grimes departed ECW that summer. A year and a half later, the two were on opposite sides of a scaffold match in XPW. There, New Jack exacted his revenge with the use of a stun gun, incapacitating Grimes before unsafely throwing him off the 20-foot structure and towards a bevy of tables below, which Grimes barely grazed in his adult state. Incredibly though, Grimes only suffered minor injuries, including a dislocated ankle. By New Jack's own admission, he was trying to kill Grimes, claiming that he was trying to throw him into the turnbuckles below. Reportedly, while Grimes was being tended to in the post-match, New Jack approached him and coldly said, "Now we're even." For the second time in less than 10 months, a pro wrestler was gravely damaged by a senseless stunt, descending from a perilous height. The first one passed away as part of an entrance gone wrong, and the second could easily have died as well from a mostly improvised high spot, avoiding death but sustaining the toll of several major injuries. Both incidents were the result of careless planning, but whereas Owen Hart's death could be attributed to poor planning, the desire for the carabiner to easily break away with minimal pull, New Jack and Grimes' fall was facilitated by no planning. Just, there's a scaffold, let's take a bump off that through some tables, without even considering that it might not be that easy. Through the years, wrestling has made regular use of dangerous stunts, though the bigger promotions put more stock into safety measures. Ladders are sturdy enough to be climbed from both sides by heavyweight athletes, and when someone does climb a ladder, there's usually somebody to brace it, whether subtle or not. Chairs to the head are mostly forbidden now, and for any use of fire, there are multiple individuals on standby with extinguishers. Sting retired his high-wire entrance following Owen's death, only bringing it back for a special occasion with proper safety protocols followed, and with the blessing of Martha Hart. In an industry that doesn't hesitate to try and top what's already been done, these safeguards are highly necessary. There's nothing wrong with pro wrestling cultivating a chaotic atmosphere in the name of entertainment, but that doesn't mean the performers can't have as much protection as possible. On March 12, 2000, a total lack of planning and protection almost resulted in the second mid-show pro wrestling fatality in less than 1 year. It nonetheless altered the life and career of one notable wrestler forever and serves as a cautionary tale in an industry with far too many close calls. I've been Jack from Cultaholic, and that was the true story of the Danbury Fall.